Welcome to the Professional Troublemaker podcast. This is the place where we help you cultivate the courage, authenticity, and audacity you need to use your voice, take up space, and live a life that is so bold, even your wildest dreams say goals. I'm your host, Luvvie Ajayi Jones, New York Times bestselling author, sought-after speaker, and side-eye sorceress, bringing you thought-provoking conversations with amazing people who have taken action and have consistently showed up with the courage and confidence they needed to become the fear fighters they are today. Like the late, great John Lewis said, these are the kind of people who are never, ever afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. Before we jump into today's interview, know that this podcast is named after my second New York Times bestselling book, Professional Troublemaker, The Fear Fighter Manual, which is available now wherever you get your books. With this book and with everything that I do, I am on a mission to help 1 million people live audaciously. To do that, they must fight their fear. So think of it, 1 million people who are out there standing on the edge of something great and need that little push of encouragement. That push to be the domino, to say the hard thing, to have the hard conversation. 1 million people kicking their fears to the curb and stepping into the life that they've been dreaming of. 1 million people asking for a raise. 1 million people, starting a fierce job that they're not sure they're ready for. 1 million people doing something that feels so big that their wildest dreams say goals. My goodness. So that is what writing this book has done for me. What it's already done for those who are reading it and gifting it to others. This book has empowered people to say yes to things that they were previously saying no to. It's empowered people to have tough conversations they weren't gonna have before. People have asked for raises and promotions and gotten them after reading this book and finding the courage to speak up. The domino effect of what has been happening when a few people have decided not to live in the realm of fear has been amazing. Think of what could happen if 1 million people stop letting fear be the first factor in their decision-making. An audacious mission like that can't happen without you. So let's get this book in the hands of as many people as possible. Buy a copy of Professional Troublemaker for yourself or as a gift for your friend who needs a push. I know it'll change your life like it's changed mine. And I know it will change lives of all these people who touch it because domino effects are real. Professional Troublemaker, which is available in hardcover or audiobook, I narrated it, and ebook, is now at professionaltroublemakerbook.com. Order it there or wherever you buy your books. If you've been a part of Love Nation for very long, you know I'm a shoe lover and a sneakerhead. And because of that, and for more, I am really excited about this conversation. Today, I'm talking to designer and entrepreneur and world changer, Jason Mayden. After becoming the first Black design intern for Nike, Jason went on to design for the Jordan brand and is one of 8 people on the planet to design the most iconic sneaker of all time. Plus, he's the only Chicago boy to do it. The products he designed while at Nike and Jordan brand have become some of the most coveted cultural artifacts of our time. Jason is currently the CEO and founder of Silicon Valley, an award-winning design and strategy consultancy specializing in the creation of partnerships between athletes, entertainers, and global creatives. He's also the president of Fear of God Athletics, Jared Lorenzo's partnership with Adidas. Jason is an amazing husband, father, and a mentor, and a man of deep character. Plus, he's one of the few men we've had on this podcast since the beginning, so you know he's amazing. You're gonna love this interview. All right, Jason, so we're just gonna have a good conversation.
Yep.
You have the honor of being one of the few men. I think there's been like 5 men total that have been on this podcast.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope. So that makes it even more special. I'm not gonna mess up for the fellas then. I'm not gonna drop the ball.
You're like one of like 5 dudes. I'm like, yo, because how I choose the people who I want to be in conversation with are people who I think are disruptors, who are just like high emotional EQ, and who are just doing amazing stuff. And I was like, gotta have Jason in this place.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I really do. You know me, I'm just on my little journey, just sticking to myself, drinking water and staying sucker free.
Hey, sucker free is the way to live. Listen.
That's it.
All right. So we're just gonna jump in, have a good conversation, and this is gonna bless the people.
Perfect.
All right. So Jason, I start by asking everybody, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Alive.
Mm.
I mean, it was that simple. I mean, in Chicago, I tell people, most folks read about conspiracies. We grew up in one. And so you didn't realize the awkwardness of talking about your mentality as a child until you became an adult. And so, things like, having a family, things like owning a home, those weren't financial milestones. They were indicators that I was an adult, which meant that I had made it to a certain point in my life. And so beyond just wanting to be a designer and a creative, I always just wanted to be older. I felt like that was an accomplishment in and of itself. So when people ask me sometimes like, man, I see the salt and pepper coming in your beard, man. And how do you feel about that? I'm like, brother, sister, understand that it is a blessing for me to have gray hair because it means that I'm here. And so I look at time differently than most people because, I was sick when I was 7 years old and I almost lost my life. And so I understand the preciousness of each moment and how each moment is not guaranteed. And so when people ask me, things about what I wanted to be when I grow up or what do I desire most, it's the simplest thing. I just want another day to show my family I love them and to represent for my ancestors. That's it.
I'm going to slow you down a bit and dig deeper into that. So tell me more about your upbringing. What made it where you could not take each day for granted?
Yeah, my parents have been together since they were 13 or 14. They were one of the first students, if not the first students, to integrate into Finger High School on the South Side. And just watching their sacrifices, of my family members who are activists in the community, church builders, math teachers, working for the city. I realized the fragility of now, how fragile each and every second is because you lose people. And for me, it really stood out when I was 7 years old and I had septicemia. And I remember the doctors coming in and out of my room saying, if he'll make it, if he'll be okay. And to have my life discussed, with the word if, it changes your orientation with your childhood. I was no longer a kid. I was wrestling with an adult topic of mortality. And that really was the thing that woke me up. And it didn't wake me up in a negative way. I wasn't afraid of what would happen. I just understood like I need to maximize and optimize every single second that I have. So I just use my 24 hours differently than other people. My wife jokes that she thinks I get like 36 hours per day because I do so much, but it's just because I'm so excited. And when you think about everything through the lens of how children see the world, every day they're seeing something for the first time. So they get to stay in this constant state of wonder and awe. And that's really all I do. I wake up and I find magic in the smallest things. I find wonder in the smallest things. I think that's what allows me to have that sense of, urgency of getting the most out of each moment.
I love that. So 7-year-old Jason, how was he spending his days once he got out of the hospital? What was he like? Was he serious? Was he goofy?
Man, I was quiet. I was smaller than everyone. My family is multiracial. So I oftentimes was asked, what am I? Because my hair is completely straight. And so I just kind of stuck to myself. I made my friends through drawing girls' names in bubble letters and selling Ninja Turtle trading cards that I would make on my own.
That's so wholesome. Oh my.
Yeah. So I was like, I could draw. And that was the thing is that was my gateway into being accepted. Was using my talents as a form of conversation. I wasn't a person that was trying to draw to get attention. I was drawing to hopefully, find a sense of self-worth within my social construct, where I was at on the South Side, with the people I wanted to impress, which were my classmates and my peers, and my family. So yeah, 7-year-old Jason wasn't as wild as, 12, 13-year-old Jason. He just was appreciative of every single second and was trying to express himself visually.
All right, so tell us about 12-year-old Jason.
12-year-old Jason was in the streets. And, a lot of it came down to just feeling a little bit tired of people, feeling as if they could say or do certain things because I stuck to myself, because I was quiet, because I was small. Most people knew, that my father was in the military at one point and he had trained all of us how to fight growing up. And so it's just that it's the trap of Chicago where you feel that any transgression against you is a character assassination attempt. And you proactively bias towards, physically violent outcomes or emotionally violent outcomes where your anger became your badge of masculinity. And so I carried that. And it wasn't that I wanted to, it's just, it was a necessity for me to be able to navigate going from school to where I was living. And I made a lot of stupid decisions that could have cost me not only my freedom, but my life. But what I do appreciate about that moment is through it all, my grandmother was a steady force. Like, my grandmother was amazing, my mother's mother. She showed up when she was fighting cancer and became a lunch lady at my school and would curse out all the other lunch ladies and tell them, you ain't making my grandbaby food because you're nasty. Like, my grandma was that, she was that grandma. She called you out on the job. And, it was her. She knew I was a fragile spirit and I could have went either way. So she completely assigned herself to me for the last of her days to let me know that I wasn't alone. So it was those types of, I would say, divine intercessions that allowed me to, stray from my path, but not completely deviate totally from my path so that God can use my testimony to help other people.
So you basically had these armors around you, protecting you from yourself and the world. Basically,
yeah.
So when you finished high school, what was your plan?
Get to Nike.
Get to Nike.
Yeah, that was it. Get to Nike.
So walk me through that. How did you end up getting to Nike from high school? Because you had this legendary career at Nike, but walk me through it.
Yeah, so it was crazy. I transferred high schools my senior year because where I was going to Thornridge freshman through junior year. And anyone that knows Dalton knows Thornridge. It's not, it was a wild place. It was where parents from the South Side sent their kids thinking that they would get a better environment and actually realized that they were sending them into the lion's den. So my sister was coming into high school, and so my parents decided it was time for us to move. So my senior year, I ended up at Rich Central out at Richton Park, which was a complete culture shock for me because I had never been in that type of environment. Kids driving BMWs to school, I'm taking a bus, parents having, 8, 9 bedrooms in their house, and we didn't have that. So I was a complete fish out of water. So I stuck to myself academically. I was pretty much done with high school. So I was working in the athletic director's office. I was running track, throwing shot put, and they had kind of seen me sketch sneakers. I've been drawing sneakers and writing letters to Nike pretty much my entire life.
Really?
Yeah, I started writing letters when I was around 10. Just telling them like, listen, I want to be there. How can I be there? Calling, pretending like I knew employees. I did everything possible to make myself visible to them. So they had knew my journey. They knew I wanted to be a footwear designer, even though I didn't know that the discipline I wanted to study. Go ahead.
Yo, hold for a second. So 10-year-old you was like, I know one thing. I want to work at the premier sports brand at the point, Nike.
Yeah.
And you started writing letters to Nike corporate.
Yeah.
At 10.
At 10, yeah.
And would do it regularly.
Yeah, probably once every couple of months, just checking in, sending letters, like sending sketches.
Did you ever get a letter back?
I did. I got a couple letters. I got a couple catalogs. I had a chance to talk to someone at HR once, that they're the ones who told me about the word internship. And so I used each of those interactions as building blocks, to build my confidence. Because at the end of the day, I figured Nike needed what I had. It needed my insight. It needed a kid from Chicago. They had Michael Jordan, but I figured that there was no one there working, from my neighborhood. I didn't see anyone. So I felt like I could be that person. And so I just inserted myself into the conversation. I figured that no one was coming to give me an opportunity. My parents often told me, close mouths and get fed. So I opened my mouth and I advocated for myself. And ended up, getting in contact, like I mentioned, with someone in customer service who referred me to someone in HR. And that person told me about internships and how, I was a kid and I was too young, but that's the way that you get into Nike is through an internship. And I just stuck with that all the way through high school into college.
So where'd you go for college?
I went to CCS in Detroit. So it's
what was your major?
Industrial design and minor in graphic design.
You've been so clear from jump. You've been so clear from jump. All right. So how was college? Like, when did you get that first internship?
Oh man. So college was wild because initially I was supposed to, I wanted to go to Georgia Tech to double major in mechanical electrical engineering because while I was a 7-year-old kid, all I could do is, eat popcorn and watch Batman in the hospital. So I would watch old Adam West Batmans with my dad and my uncle. And I figured that, for me, when I got into the comic book, I saw this brother named Lucius Fox. And Lucius Fox was an engineer, and he made all the gadgets for Batman. So I said, okay, that's the closest that I can get to someone designing for Michael Jordan is Lucius Fox designing for Batman. And so my childlike brain, I rationalized whatever Lucius Fox studied is what I need to study. And so he was an engineer. He was a financier, Black CEO of Wayne Enterprises. So I wanted to be like him. So initially I was headed to do mechanical electrical engineering. My coaches had found an article about a kid named Chi-Wei Lee who actually interned at Nike and designed a car for Toyota, and it mentioned industrial design. So they were the ones who advocated and said, you really don't need to be an engineer. You should be an industrial designer. They colluded with my parents. They both encouraged me to look into CCS. I applied last minute with, portfolio full of, like I said, girls' names and bubble letters and illustrations, and actually got into CCS on what they would call probation because my portfolio wasn't strong enough to be considered, directly an industrial designer at that time. But I, once again, was so used to negotiating for myself and advocating that I figured out a way to be there in that major. And if I failed, I would switch quickly to graphic design. Ended up not failing, thank God. Was not the worst in my class, wasn't the best. Came home freshman and sophomore year, and I would go to the Art Institute every single day. I would hop on a train and go down to the Art Institute and sketch and take classes. So I figured I wasn't playing sports, so design came my sport. Michael put up 1,000 jump shots a day to improve his jump shot. And I figured sketching is muscle memory. So I would sketch 1,000 sketches a day. A day, Post-it notes, napkins, paper. I would just count. I would just keep count because I needed to catch up. And in my mind, I figured all these kids have private art classes. Their parents are wealthy. They've been to museums their whole life, but they're not going to outwork me. I was like, that's the one thing they can't do is outwork me.
No.
So
God.
Yeah, I went through it. In and out of the hospital for exhaustion and everything, but I refused to quit because I had no plan B. My plan B was plan A.
Which was Nike.
That's it.
So then when'd you get that call?
I got the call. I got rejected 2 times before because I was too young. I got the call my junior year when I was supposed to actually go to Paris to study car design. I won a competition with Renault and Peugeot as a product designer, because the myth was that all the best talent was in automotive. And I, got into automotive just to prove that, product designers weren't failed car designers. And so I would compete with them, and won the competition. And at the same time, I'm making this choice to go study in Paris, which would have been huge because I knew that a lot of Black revolutionaries went there, James Baldwin, to be one. I mean, just the relationship with Europe at that time for Black intellectuals and the arts was unique to me. And I figured that I could be part of extending that legacy. And Paris was the place where a lot of them went. And then that same summer was when Nike offered the internship, which coincidentally happened to be, the first Black design intern for product design and Jordan Brand's first design intern. So obviously I had to make that choice.
And what year was this?
This was 2001.
Yeah. So you're a junior in college. You just finished junior year.
Yep. You
get this call and now you have to pick between Paris and Jordan.
Yeah.
And you picked Jordan.
Yeah.
Because plan A.
Yep.
How'd it go?
I got there. I ended up meeting Mike on my first day.
What?
Yeah. Coincidentally, he was on campus. They were getting ready to unveil internally the Air Jordan 17. Actually, the prototype for the Air Jordan 17. It was a sales meeting. So he's on the elevator, getting on the elevator. I'm getting off the elevator trying to find my desk. And we had an exchange where we talked for a second and I explained to him my background, my story. He was like, man, how did you get here? I was like, bro, I took the elevator. He said, no, Jason, like, how did you get, from Roseland to Portland? Like, and what was crazy, I didn't realize, and this is how God works. I didn't realize that my mom and dad went to high school with his ex-wife. With
Juanita Jordan?
With Juanita Jordan over their finger. Yeah. And so my mom was on a swim team with her. And like all these things were overlapping in my life where I was directly in direct proximity to my hero my entire life and never knew. And so, I ended up designing a shoot. I went to production that summer. They offered me a job, right at the end of my internship. So I went back to school, contracting for Nike my senior year. So I went pro while I was still in school and then graduated and went straight back.
So you were designing shoes your senior year of college?
Yeah.
What was that first shoe that you designed?
The Air Jordan 17 Mule. So my first product was an Air Jordan. It was a post-game recovery shoe because I told him, I said, most athletes have terrible feet because either if you're wearing cleats or you're wearing basketball shoes, a lot of times you have damaged toenails. So post-game, you don't want to have your toes out. So you might want something that covers your foot but lets you feel comfortable. And they loved the story, and we ended up selling it. It sold out, first release. And I think they're getting ready to retro it.
I just Googled it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so you were batting 1,000 out the gate.
Trying to.
So you graduate 2002?
Yeah, 2002.
So you graduated the year that I started college, and you go straight to Portland.
Straight to Beaverton, Oregon. It was the strangest experience ever. So strange, but it was amazing. A lot of people, where we grew up, the only way we knew about Oregon was through that video game, The Oregon Trail. That was it. So I thought, like, man, I can't drink the water because I get dysentery.
Dysentery and cholera.
Cholera. I'm like, I'm out there with cholera, fam. Like, I'm explaining to my grandma. And so I didn't understand the history of the state. I think now, looking back, we understand why Oregon was created, what the structure of the state constitution included, the things that weren't accessible to Black folks who came out there at that time. And so there was a little bit of that residue, of Oregon's foundation, when I got there, but I was seeing it change over because the younger generation was more aware of what was happening in the world. So it was extreme kind of like love movement with hippies and an extreme right-wing separatist movement with militias. And they both existed in the same city at the same time. And so that was weird to me because none of it included people that looked like me. And I just kind of saw a different side of America. I saw poverty through a different lens. And that was the first time I really seen it. You hear about it and we talk about it in the Midwest, but when you go and you see a predominantly white state and you see people suffering, you realize like, okay, there's a bigger system here that, that's damaging for different reasons to different people. And it just gave me a more global perspective of what the system really entailed.
Man, Oregon is like, you see it and you be like, people who you assume are trust fund babies on the streets. It's a mind fuck. It is.
Yeah,
it actually is. It's like, oh, okay. So how were those early years in Jordan? Because you ultimately were part of the class that kind of put Jordan brand back on the map after MJ had retired.
Yeah, he was still, when I started, he was with the Wizards. He had just came back.
The second retirement.
The second retirement. So it was kind of like that gray period of, okay, is he playing? Is he an owner? What I can tell you is that, it wasn't peaches and cream. Nike wasn't necessarily excited for Jordan brand. It was a necessity. I often tell people we were needed but not wanted because they felt like, who's going to buy a retired guy's shoes? Getting ready to sign Kobe, and LeBron is coming out of high school, and Melo's coming out of Syracuse, and generation, they're going to move on from you. But what we had to do was sit down and decide what our fate was going to be, because Michael is an idea. He's not a person. He had became kind of the bar of excellence that people were compared against. They would say, I'm the Michael Jordan of, I'm the Michael Jordan of, right? And so we're like, how can you replace a person who has become the bar for excellence that people try to meet in various industries? And so in a lot of ways, I was the youngest, and only employee from Chicago at the inception of what we now know as Jordan Brand. So the early days, we were just making stuff. I mean, we didn't have a large budget. There was no large team. It was only really 2 or 3 designers touching everything. So I was thrown into conversations with Derek Jeter and Melo and Randy Moss and Roy Jones and all these people. And I'm just 21 years old as a kid, working with legends and learning from them and traveling with them. So I grew up really fast, to be honest, because I was around these gentlemen and these women who had conquered the world, and they were giving me game before social media and Clubhouse. They were giving me game in real life, about how to navigate and how to survive, and the power of delayed gratification. And that's the one thing that I've learned is slow money is for show money.
How did you approach design? Like when you sat down and they said, yes, Derek is coming out with a shoe What does this need to be? Because I do see some car and automotive details in some shoes. How do you approach design?
I generally, I don't look at other products for inspiration. I look at narratives because I understand that the artifacts we create are part of other people's journeys, other people's stories. And so I have to think, how does this fit neatly into this person's narrative? So I'll read history books, comic books. I'll read, nature books. I try to pull from the world around me versus allowing someone else's ideas to influence me. Because there's enough inspiration just in through God's creation. We don't need to look anywhere else for that. So I typically start with nature, history, fantasy, comic books, stuff like that, stuff that sparks the imagination. Because at the end of the day, I understand when a person picked up, at that time, when a person picked up my product, it may be the first and only time they can afford this thing. So it has to give them a level of joy. It has to perform in a sense. It has to feel, the way that they hoped it would feel once they walked out of that store. So, and that came from Derek Jeter. He used to tell me about the stuff he learned from the great Yankees like Joe DiMaggio, where he said, look, somebody bought a ticket to come and see you play for the first time. You have to live up to what they expect. And I thought about that for footwear. Somebody saved their money to buy some Jordans. It has to live up to what they expect it to be. And I took that seriously,
Do you have a favorite pair that you designed?
During that time, I would probably say all the Dornbecker Children's Hospital stuff. That was the favorite stuff for me.
Did you raise money for charity?
Yeah. We raised money for charity and with kids who were, fighting, life-threatening diseases, who had, traumatic experiences. And so I was the first designer in Jordan brand to tackle that project. And obviously because of my relationship with being a hospital kid. So the Dornbecker, 3, the Dornbecker 2, the Dornbecker 1. So all the ones that kind of set off the movement for the brand were like my personal, my babies, because I really wanted to give back to the kids in the hospital because I knew what it felt like to be them.
Man. And what's your favorite silhouette?
The 4, probably the 4. Yeah, the 4 is my favorite. I like the 4 and I like the 20 as well. The 20 was pretty cool.
I like the 4s. I just got the starfish ones. The 20s. I had not seen these. The ones are my faves of all time because they're just so versatile. They go with everything. You could be wearing a dress. You could be rocking whatever. It goes. So what people don't realize is y'all were underdogs at Nike. Yeah,
very much so.
Jordan Brand that everyone knows now is a name. It is a multi-billion-dollar entity. It is its own force.
Yeah.
Y'all were the underdogs. Yeah. During that time, what drove you?
What drove us was the commitment to each other. Mike, Black, depending on how you know him, his nickname is Black Cat. I call him Mr. Jordan. He treated us like teammates. He treated us like we were in a huddle with the Bulls. It wasn't, us working for him. It was us working with him. And we all felt a sense of, I would say, responsibility for the lives that we were influencing with the work we did, especially me coming from Chicago. So what motivated me was knowing that a lot of my friends wouldn't get this opportunity to work on mics. A lot of my friends probably would never even get the opportunity to travel to Oregon. So, myself and my boss at the time, Dwayne Edwards, who's from Inglewood, California, like we understood the sensitivity and the honor and gratitude we had to exude in our positions because we were, one of ones. No one in the industry had done we were doing. And so that's what motivated us. It wasn't the numbers at the time when we started. We were around $175 million business unit. We weren't really a separate brand as people thought.
Yeah.
Small team of about 70 people. Majority of that was sales, product development. And so it was a really small, tight family. And it was just, you look across the table and you see other people with the same level of hunger and commitment in their eyes. It's not hard to be inspired. And we just moved as a unit. We took losses together. We took victories together. But at the end of the day, we all were supportive of each other's aspirations. And we wanted to get to the place, and do our best work on behalf of the kid.
Man, so 13 years, you helped build this brand to be what it is today. You're part of that ragtag team that is no longer ragtag. What do you think you learned in those 13 years?
That the people at the table are not smarter than me.
Yes.
Like that was the thing, I had imposter syndrome a lot. I used to downplay my intelligence because I felt like they expected me to not be smart. So I just kind of would use simpler constructs and simpler vernacular because I felt like, well, this is the expectation that I need to fit. And it was when I got to the table and realized that a lot of people were just really good at not getting fired versus being really good at their job. That's when I decided that I wasn't going to hide my intelligence and I was going to be unapologetically Jason. And I started to speak the way that I want to speak, the way that I spoke to my intellectual friends. I started to work on the things that I wanted to work on. And it wasn't like years, it was months when I made that switch. After really getting in there and realizing like these people are just exceptionally mediocre at some things.
Exceptionally mediocre. God damn.
Well, yeah. And that's the trick of corporate America is that people think it's a pyramid. It's not, it's a diamond. And there's a lot of people who are in the middle, who just sit in the middle, and they become a bottleneck for people who have aspirations and talent. And if you're not open and understanding and have discernment as to why they're stuck in the middle, you can rage against them versus putting that energy into pursuing your goal. And I knew that not everybody wanted to take the risk I took. Not everybody had the level of ambition that I had, and I didn't judge them for that. I just wanted to move and operate in the way that I moved and operate. Because the thing they would tell you is, Jason, slow down. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm like, according to where I come from, it is absolutely a sprint. I'm racing against the age of 25. Like my whole life, you told me I wouldn't make it to 25. Now I'm 22, and I'm thinking, okay, this 3-year window is real. How much can I get done in this 3-year window? Once I crossed over that threshold of 25 is when I kind of understood that was a psychological trick that they were playing on me, and I didn't have to subscribe to that type of thinking. And so I reframed my reality, and I started to manifest the things that I felt were important, and I started to speak life over myself instead of waiting for somebody else to do it. And that's kind of how I survived.
Yes. So you spent 13 years at Nike. What makes you leave Nike, which was the brand?
Honestly, it was a combination of things. It was personal growth. My dream job was my first job, so that there was a little bit of like, I need to move on to discover what else I can do. I had always had aspirations to get an advanced degree, so going back to Stanford was a big deal for me, and that experience changed me a lot. And then also my son had a few health challenges that I simply couldn't ignore. And I decided, and I told everyone on the record, the only reason I would quit is if it's my family or if I feel there's nothing else left here for me to do. And at that time, it was my family. And then it became more about, okay, I've achieved the things I wanted to achieve. And if I stick around, I'm pretty much just waiting to be promoted versus challenging myself. And I was raised as an athlete to believe that if you want to run faster, you have to run with faster people. And I saw people running faster in the Silicon Valley than Oregon. And I wanted to use my youth to get ahead, because I don't come from generational wealth, and sitting and waiting on someone to give me something is not the way that I was raised. So once again, closed mouths don't get fed. So I took the leap of faith along with my wife. We came back to the Valley, and we, pretty much, pivoted careers and started from scratch with the knowledge I had to build what the stuff I'm currently doing today.
Yeah, you've been quoted as saying that instead of using the industry of health and wellness to fix broken adults, you wanted to use play as prevention to build stronger kids.
Yeah.
So you started a shoe company called Superheroic, which in itself was also history making. And the goal of the company was to convince every young kid who puts on a pair of its shoes that they're a superhero, capable of solving problems and saving the world. So tell us more about Superheroic.
Yeah, it started with a research project I was doing at Stanford when I was part of the design fellowship at the D School. I stepped down from the advisory board. It was like lecturing and researching and teaching. And initially it was intended to be for middle school age Black boys and Latino boys. It was something called the Tribe. So I was trying to reimagine the Boy Scouts and said, what skills do young boys of color need today to survive? Like, we don't need to know how to start a fire. We need to know how to start a company and a revolution. So how can I teach them this? And then I expanded it out and said, okay, here's what I do for little boys of color. How can I support little girls of color? And then it just became an evolution of like, wait, there's a system here. There's a system that we create using the construct of play in order to empower kids, to give them a mindset of resilience, because I realized it was mental stability and mental health that would be the topic that they would have to tackle the most in their generation. Ours was external. I saw the challenges in my neighborhood, but when you're around kids today, like, a lot of the challenges are interpersonal. They're inside of their mind. And so, my favorite character obviously is Batman. I came across a research study called the Batman effect out of University of Minnesota. that talked about kids who wore capes and who were told they were heroes. They performed to the level of the hero because it wasn't them. Wow. It was their exemplar self. And I remember the power of make-believe and what it did for me. And so I started a company that honestly put make-believe into a system, and the products and the play experiences and the narrative and vernacular and the imagery of kids of color being heroes was all intended to let a child know, like, you are the hero. You don't have to wait on someone to save you. You have all the skills and tools you'll need to be magnificent. And we ran for 4.5 years, did a lot of tremendous work, helped a lot of kids. And it was a beautiful thing because I saw the confidence of my children increase through that project. And if that's all I did, then that would have been enough. But to know that, we've touched the lives of thousands of kids across the country, of numerous superheroic days across the country. And it's a blessing. It's a true blessing.
I mean, innovation is real. Innovation is super real. I met you, I think it was right after you had left Nike. And you hadn't launched Superheroic yet.
Yeah.
All I saw was a Black man speaking my language. It was at Afrotech when we actually met in person. And the one thing about you is that you do move with a different light. You know what I mean? Like, you move with this grounding force. What would you say to 12-year-old you today?
You're enough. You're enough. That's it. I mean, the thing about being young and a person of color, we're hoping that life will get better when we obtain certain things.
Yeah.
That you magically have this life of joy and abundance, and peace all at the same time. But it really doesn't work that way. It comes first by accepting who you are and loving who you are. So I think 12-year-old Jason, I would just tell him, you're enough. You're enough, man. You don't need to do any more. You don't need to be any less. Like, God made you the way you are. That's enough.
Oh, that's powerful. That is powerful. And how has your growth in these last 20 years even, what has changed it? I know you do therapy, but what is the thing that you have found has been integral for you, especially as a Black man who is in Silicon Valley? You're often the only in the spaces that you're in, and you're trying to build a healthy whole life.
Servitude. I'm not a person that looks at myself and feels sorry. I tell everybody that in my lowest days, I find a way to serve. Also, I separate being Black from being a man. I tell everybody at the end of the day, I'm a man. I'm over 6 foot, speak English as a first language, was born in this country, and I'm heterosexual. I got a lot of privilege with that. What am I supposed to do with this Black privilege? And so I use a lot of my time to advocate, on behalf of people who may be affected by the privilege that men hold, whether it be women or people of color. Like, I speak up for others a lot. So I think that's the thing that I've learned. That's the thing that's helped me stay grounded. And that's the thing that I feel empowers me the most is my service and my desire to want to teach. Because none of this is about me. None of what I do is about me. I really am here to try to create space for others and to give people other opportunities to just live their dreams the way I've been, so blessed and fortunate to do.
What does leadership mean to you?
Leadership means honesty. Honesty. Yeah. When you don't have an answer, just say you don't have an answer. Leadership isn't, people talk about, leading from the top or leading from the front. Like, when you look at nature, the most powerful people within the pack, specifically lions, they're in the back of the pack. The leader of the lion, the king or whatever you want to call it, the female lion or the male lion, they're in the back because they understand that's the weak side. They want to make sure that the side that's unprotected is the one that they protect. And that's how I look at leadership. I'm the person in the back. I'm not in front. I don't need to be in front. I'm the supportive person. I'm the person that advocates. I'm the person that speaks up. I'm not the person that's going to dictate. I don't lead with the iron fist. I try to lead with the velvet glove. It's very different because I know that people are fragile, and leaders can affect how we feel about ourselves. I've had a lot of quote unquote leaders, in education who said some very damaging things that have haunted me for years. And because I took their words more seriously because of their positions and stations in life. So I understand the impact of my words and actions on others. And I try to just be a safe place where people know I'm there to serve them, and I tell my team a lot as the leader, I take the blame, but I give the praise. And I mean it. If something goes wrong, it's my fault. I didn't give you clear instruction. I didn't give you a clear game plan. It's my fault. But if we win, you did that. You executed the vision, so I try to make sure I keep that mantra, alive because I fundamentally live by that and I believe it.
Imagine being in an online space where people's foolishness doesn't make you want to fight the air. That might sound impossible with your current choices for social media, but I was sick of wading through nonsense to find like-minded people, so I created my online community. And if you're the kind of person who is striving to be a professional troublemaker and fight fear, we need you to join us in that community because you need people to cheer you on. Love Nation is my online community and app that is a safe space in a dumpster fire world. It's the place for the most thoughtful, funny, most chill-deficient people on these interwebs. We're a community that comes together to make each other better with curated conversations, opportunities to connect, and challenges to help us transform and do better in every area of our lives. So, I want you to come in there, join us, become a citizen of Love Nation. So go to lovenation.com, LUVVNATION. Download the app in the App Store or on your Android. It's on iOS and Android. And come on through. All right, back to the podcast. You are now in a different form of leadership. Your latest position and your latest title is president of Fear of God Athletics. Talk to us about how that came to be.
Man, Jerry and I have been friends for a minute, and it just kind of organically evolved. When Super Rock had to shut down, we started to see the early signs of the impact of Corona, like late 2019. So it was a combination of having to wind my company down and then sell off some of the assets in order to just, make sure everyone was okay. And this industry had already decided that what I was working on was cool, but it wasn't cool as doing something at Fashion Week. It wasn't as cool as doing something with the rapper, right? Because I'm working on kids. That's not the thing that gets you clouded complex, Con. It's not cool, quote unquote. But Jerry, knowing me and knowing my personality, knew that what I was showing was different than what I was carrying. And so he just would check in as a friend, like, hey man, what's going on? Hey man, I know you're carrying a lot. Hey man, like, I'm here. Hey man, you need anything, let's talk, let's figure something out. And it just started as us checking in, and our conversations just continuously evolved. And then we realized, like, man, it was the right time to do something together. And it was the right time to have our complementary skills aligned into one effort. Because we joke about being like this industry's version of the Splash Brothers, because we're both excellent at what we do for different reasons, and we don't have ego, so we don't overlap, we don't compete. And it's dope to see it play out and how we work and how we communicate and how we complement each other. Because for one, this industry hasn't seen, two highly creative, successful Black men work together in this capacity, let alone give each other props, you know what I'm saying? And let alone trying to bring everyone along with them, women and, other marginalized people. So we know that we have a responsibility to each other as friends, but also to the expectations placed on us by the people that look up to us. So it just happened naturally. It was no gamesmanship. There was no strategy. It was just good people being good people. And we decided that we should rock on something together.
The announcement broke the internet. For like a week, the announcement broke the internet. And it was awesome to see. Yeah, you and Jerry Lorenzo represent a different type of Black male leadership. One that feels that it's being led by vulnerability, by honesty, and real, true good work at the core of it. And it's real chill, like Essentials and what Fear of God has been releasing so far. I've been like, it's so funny. It's not flashy, but you can just tell it's just high quality. It's like, to your point, it's like the real G's move in silence, the leadership that's leading from the back. That is what it feels like. For you, what are you most excited about in this new work that you're doing with Jerry Lorenzo?
Man, the legacy we get to leave behind, exactly what you just described, like showing people a different way. There's no vulnerability, there's no lack of strength in being vulnerable. It actually is the strongest thing you can be, and we openly often talk about our emotions and what's going on, because for so long, toxic masculinity has robbed us of the ability to be a whole human. Yeah. And, we rage against our emotions so unhealthily. We turn our emotions inward and it becomes destructive. So if we can show people like, look, we're not suckers, we're not pushovers, but we're fathers, we're husbands, we're community builders, we're brothers, we're sons, we're in service of a higher calling. And so in being in service, we also have to be transparent and congruent, not only in what we say, but what we do, because we know that this isn't something that's about a clout chase. This is about impact. Yeah. And so I think that's what I'm most excited about. is when the story's written on us, you know, people will talk about all the products we've made and all that. That's great. But it's like, what is the real impact we've made in our community? What is the real impact we've made in people's lives? And what is the real legacy we're leaving behind for our children to build upon? Because none of this is for us. We're playing for forever. This is an eternal game that we're playing. You know, we're trying to get a crown that shall not perish. We're not trying to get just a, you know, a temporal award that fades away with time. I mean, history's forgotten more heroes than it's created. And we know with the time that we've been given, we need to do something that doesn't necessarily directly always point back to us, but points towards something more meaningful and more bigger than us, which is the concept of possibilities. So now we've created a new possibility for people that look like us that didn't exist before this moment.
That's real. And y'all gonna have me wearing it again. I've already started wearing Adidas. I'm trying to let you know right now. I gotta let you know, I've been a Nike girl for decades. I was the one who was going to Foot Locker after stacking her coins for 3 months and being like, I gotta get those Nike Prestos. I gotta get those things. Like, I've been a sneakerhead for a long time, but I've been a very specifically Nike sneakerhead. And I'm telling you, between Ivy Park and Fear of God, I'm like, well, I guess, you know, my loyalty might have ended. I think I have become a 2-brand sneakerhead. I'm over here, Adidas down to my socks today, okay?
You know, it's enough out there. They can eat too. They can eat. Let them eat.
Everybody can eat. That's the power of it. But y'all are shifting culture. Y'all are shifting loyalty, okay? That is the power of when you get the right names align with your brand. You shift decades-long loyalties. I literally was like, well, shit, let me go. I'm here waiting for the first pair. Like, the moment it drops, go ahead, take my coins, take my money. That is power. That is real power. And you know people don't play about their brands.
Nah, not our people.
Our people do not play about it. So I was like, I told my husband, I was like, we are now also an Adidas household, just so you know. He was like, it's because of Jason. And I was like, a little bit, yeah, that's what happened. I'm not sorry about it. So he has accepted it, that we are now a 2-brand household. But that's power, yo. Like, I hope in your quiet moments, you're understanding that you are a culture shifter. It's wild. It's wild to see. And it's amazing to see. Like, so what do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room?
That's a great question. That I'm the person that people don't think exists, you know, like a nice person that just genuinely wants to see everybody win and is happy for everybody's success, even when he's taking a loss. That's it. If people can say that about me, then I did my job correctly, because I genuinely I live by that. Like, I'm the biggest cheerleader. Even if I'm in my lowest moments, I don't feel an ounce of jealousy, because I look at everybody's success like, man, I could do that too. You know, if they did it, man, that's motivating me. I could do that too. And, you know, there's been plenty of times I'll reach out and ask you about how do I write or how do I start? It's because I'm not embarrassed to tell people what I'm not good at or what I admire about them. Because most people look at that as a sign of weakness to tell another person, I admire you. I respect what you do. Wow, that's amazing. I can't do that. I get joy from it because I'm like, wow, I know a person that could do something that I can't do. That's so fascinating. And I could point my kids towards different role models, different versions of exceptionalism that doesn't have to just be in my industry. So that's what I hope people say about me, that Jason is the dude that we say doesn't exist, like successful and nice. And I really do believe in that.
And nice. I'm ready for you to write that book. So let me know when you're ready to write that book. Like, the world needs the Jason Mayden memoir, whatever it is, whether it's a business lesson book, whether it's the story of you being this Black man from Chicago who basically wrote his own path. I am excited for that. What do you want your kids to say about you when you're no longer here?
That my dad earned everything he had. Nothing was given to him. We've never hidden, you know, difficult moments from our kids. We talked them through it. You know, when they were younger, the thing that I did, and I'm so thankful I did this, is I taught them how to express themselves with their words versus their emotions. And I used the book that Frederick Douglass used to teach himself how to read, to give them a command in the English language and also to teach them the art of oration. And so the book is called The Columbian Orator, and it was a collection of the world's greatest speeches. And it broke it down in a way that allows you to read it and understand it. So I have my kids read a speech like, you know, Sermon on the Mount or a famous speech from Cicero, highlight the words they didn't know. We go to the dictionary, we look it up, we use it in a sentence, and they repeat it back to me. Now they're like 4, 5, 6 years old, could barely read and comprehend. But what I was trying to do is to let them know that, A, just because someone tells you it's difficult doesn't mean it's difficult. You just need someone to explain it to you. And B, learn how to build your vocabulary now, because when you get older, I don't want you to have to resort to using your physical abilities to defend yourself. There's power with words. Words frame reality. And that was the thing that I learned later in life, because I was so quiet as a kid. I was able to listen to everyone, and I saw that a lot of times conflict happens because people misinterpret each other's words. So I felt like if I can clearly articulate myself, I can reduce the amount of conflict I have in my life, and I can neutralize anyone not understanding where I'm coming from. And so that's what I hope my kids, say about me, is that I gave them the gift of, critical discourse and rhetoric, how to articulate themselves, how to speak and advocate, and how to, hold other people accountable to a standard that they hold themselves to. Because that's all I try to model for them,
That's beautiful. That is stunning. And your kids, just beautiful. Like, you're doing an amazing job. You're doing an amazing job. You and your wife are doing awesome. So what do you do for self-care?
Therapy. Therapy is essential. Any Black person or Black man, I speak specifically to men right now, that think that you're a sucker because you go to therapy. It's a myth. We all need an objective point of view to just tell us the real and just listen. I get up every morning, I journal, I meditate, I do yoga, I read my Bible, and then I do Peloton. So that's my daily routine. Like every morning, I don't skip a beat. I tell myself movement is medicine. And then, I just try to decide how I want to feel by Friday versus how much I need to get done by Friday. And I just work towards that. Like, how do I want to feel by Friday? Do I want to feel accomplished? Do I want to feel busy and hurried? And anything that takes me off that path or forces me to, have an opposite, inner dialogue, I just eliminate it. So I focus on, like I said, my feelings versus my productivity at this stage in my life.
That's a key. That's a key right there. How do you want to feel by Friday? Now, what do you want to have done? That's a great question. So what do you consider a professional troublemaker? What does it mean to get into good trouble?
Oh, man, I believe professional troublemaker is an accomplice, not an ally. And I tell people the definition for an accomplice is a benevolent co-conspirator. Like somebody that's going to go back to back with you and throw hands. We all got that friend that we know if it pop off, they right there. Like no questions asked.
Yep.
I think that's professional troublemaker. Speaking up when it's not convenient. Speaking up when I may lose my job because I feel like I seen something happen to you that's an injustice. And just because I'm in a position of power and I may lose some stocks and a little bit of salary doesn't mean I can turn a blind eye. I think it's doing the inconvenient thing when it's not popular. And the reason I define it in that way is a good friend of mine. She had expressed to me that a few years ago, she was denied a job by another good friend. And his explanation was he wasn't ready yet. He didn't understand why women should be in leadership. He wasn't ready. I'm like, ready? Like, bro, why do you have to be ready to know that discrimination is wrong? Why do you, it's not like we're making food. It's not like a meal is prepared. Equality is not prepared. Equality should be accessible to everyone instantaneously. And so that's why I speak up when it's inconvenient. That's why I speak up when it's uncomfortable. I never waited until I was in some powerful position to do what was right. I did what was right every step of the way. Even when I thought I had no authority that man gave me, I knew God gave me all authority because I believe in his word. So I don't worry about men. Psalms 56:4 says, in God's word I trust and praise, and God I'm not afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? They're mere mortals. What could they do to me? So I have to speak up. So that to me is what I believe in, is you have to, professional troublemakers have to do the inconvenient thing at the inconvenient time, because that's how history is made.
Come on. And that is why I wanted to be in conversation with you. I think you are an amazing professional troublemaker. You are somebody who's been disrupting your industry for a long time, disrupting your own life for the greater good. And that is also what it means to be a professional troublemaker. I honor your vulnerability, and I think it's really important for people to hear and see, because it is so different from what the pictures they try to paint about Black men is. So thank you for being you. Thank you for rolling in the way that's authentic, and for being somebody who's already iconic. And a lot of it is even beyond all the shoes you've drawn. It's about this path that you're paving and this model that you are for other people. So I appreciate you, sir.
Hey, Bam, I appreciate you. And I feel tremendously honored to be one of 5. Like, I take that seriously. For real. For real, man. For real. Like, brothers don't make space for sisters the way sisters make space for brothers. So I appreciate the space y'all made for me. And I do dedicate a vast majority of my time to checking men and letting us know like we could do better. Not to say I'm not a man basher, I am a guy, but I feel like we could do better and we have to educate ourselves. We have to educate ourselves just as much as we talk about racial equality. We got to educate ourselves about what's happening and make sure that we check ourselves. And so I appreciate the space you made, and I honor this platform, and I honor everybody who's listening to me on this platform, because I know that when they come to you, they're coming for something meaningful. They're not coming for the cat. And so I don't take that lightly. So I appreciate the space that you've created as well.
And I appreciate your brotherhood too, man. Listen, this is so dope. And I'm really excited that if people hadn't heard about you, now they will know. So Jason, I salute. More to come. And listen, the moment y'all drop a collection, I'm ready with my monies. Just send me the link. I am prepared. The drip. Y'all gonna be seeing me in the full drip, okay? I just need all the excuses. Full drip up and down. So I'm ready for you.
For sure. We got you. We got you.
Oh, all right, sir. Have a good week.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Peace, peace.
I've been thinking so much in the past few months about what it looks like to be a professional troublemaker as a leader. As my company grows, as I watch my friends step into these positions as leaders thinking about how to give people cover to be their best selves, or as Jason said, to be honest with them. Because leadership means honesty. Speaking out and speaking up as a leader doesn't mean you're a dictator. It means you can lead from the back of the pack and be supportive and be an advocate. Like he said, it means you can lead with a velvet glove. And I love his commitment to Plan A throughout his career. Writing letters to Nike and sending them sketches at age 10, he opened his mouth and advocated for himself and made that dream come true. And he spent his career opening his mouth and advocating for others so their dreams can come true. And I can't wait to see what he creates next. So be sure to follow Jason on social media. He is at Jason Mayden on Instagram and Twitter. That's JASON Mayden. And go show him some love if this interview really connected with you. Much love to Chicago Recording Company, who I've been partnering with from the start of this podcast, and they've been such a huge help putting my recordings from home together and making this sound as radio voice as possible. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Professional Troublemaker podcast. If you loved what you heard, make sure you subscribe to Professional Troublemaker in your podcast platform of choice and share it with people. Let them know this is dope. Also, order my namesake book, Professional Troublemaker, the Fear Fighter Manual, anywhere that you buy books. I especially love when you buy it from independent bookstores. So go to professionaltroublemakerbook.com for more, because this book is game-changing, and I'd say that even if I wasn't the one who wrote it. And please make sure you rate this show and leave a comment with a 5-star review, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you choose to listen. Feel free to also share some insights and whatever connected with you on social media. And be sure to tag us. We are at Professional Troublemaker on Instagram. And me, I'm at Luvvie everywhere. Until next time, have the courage to speak your truth and show up as yourself. Create good trouble.